Bob, you'll be starting the meeting, and we're going to silence all the other participants so that you can be heard loud and clear.
Okay, Tim, thank you. Greetings, everyone. This is our first live streaming and videotaped town hall meeting with no live audience, and the board, the staff, the presenters are spread out. There's 3 items on the agenda. First, I'll give a few comments on what some of the major board activities have been recently. Second, Ron Metters of UIG will talk about the increase in the water rate. And the third on the agenda is Tom will present the 2019 food and beverage financials and the 2020 plans for improvement. After that, we'll go to questions and answers. It's kind of a 2-phase part. Some questions have been forwarded to the board offline, and we will also have a call-in capability at the end. First of all, COVID-19. I'd like to acknowledge the outstanding efforts by Ricky Jordan and public services, public safety in managing the COVID-19 pandemic. When we got started with this, we were looking for other communities that we could learn something from. Came to find out that we found another community that had a plan as we had. We've had a plan since probably 2006. The current plan is dated in 2015. They've managed that plan very well. The board was involved in the initial meetings to get things started, and then we've let the professionals manage it, and they've done a great job of that. To reinforce that a little bit, a property owner, Jackie Duncan and Owlsbrow, sent a note that said, "Good morning, board members. Just a big thank you for the amazing job you all are doing to keep us informed of C-19. By simply dating each e-blast and connecting them each time with a previous dated info is a brilliant idea. With news hitting us from all directions, BC's crew has neatly and orderly kept us informed of the daily changes. You guys are awesome and have added one more of all the reasons Keith and I are thankful and blessed to be up here and out of the hotbed of the Flatlands, Atlanta. Cheers to all of you and your leadership. In faith, Jackie Duncan." Well, that was very nice of us to acknowledge the board, but as I said, Ricky and public safety have been carrying the ball and doing a great job of it. The success of the rollout of that plan is absolutely dependent on property owners supporting the mitigation steps and social distancing. That has been largely very, very successful. However, in the last day or two, I've heard some examples of groups that have gotten together in more than 10 and in less than 6 feet. I just reiterate, the key to success of that is individual property owners and their taking responsibility for social distancing. The property owners have a very good understanding of the need for the actions, understand that these actions are not something we had in mind as we started even the month of March, but they're necessary in order to protect the property owners of Big Canoe. And the property owners are accepting the sacrifices required to weather the storm. The ultimate impact of the pandemic is unknown. It's ranging all the way from predictions of a global depression with 30% or more unemployment to, on a more positive note, Big Canoe being an attractive, safe harbor from some of the chaos of some of the larger cities. So due to that uncertainty, the board is deferring non-essential capital spending, and we've also approved an hourly employee compensation plan in order to ensure the retention of our key employees when normalcy returns. We have 2 initiatives, the capital contribution fee and Creek 9, that require ultimately a property owner vote of approval of more than 50% of the property owners in order to go forward. What I expect that we will be doing in the meantime with the uncertainty is continue planning for those two initiatives and communicating with property owners and getting feedback, but not ask for a property owner vote until the pandemic impact is known. So we're going ahead with some urgency, but with no rush. As you can see in the one for the Creek 9 has a date in there for a vote of June. That is really an important date if we were to meet all of our schedules and have time to complete the project and grow the grass. However, that is not going to be done if the pandemic impact is major. The last thing that we're working on very diligently is the Bobby Jones length agreement. We signed the interim agreement back in late February, had 60 days with extensions possible to reach a final agreement on the master agreement. That has worked out very well. We've got teams from Bobby Jones Links and property owners and board members working to complete that. Expect that to be done in the next month or so. Some of the things that we've done in that is to make sure our employees are well taken care of, is we establish a focal point for employee feedback. So any concerns that employees have about 401k or insurance benefits or whatever, there is a focal point that they can address those concerns with. They will be handled. Bobby Jones Links has been very accommodating and very understanding of some of the changes that we're asking for. Also, in the meantime, GOTOM announced a new organization, and the highlights of that are reporting to the general manager. There's a director of operations. The director of operations is filled by a very experienced Big Canoe employee, and understands all of the operation parts, which is not the strongest part of Bobby Jones Links. The second director is a director of amenities. They are bringing in, Bobby Jones Links has brought in somebody that has a great deal of experience with them on their strength of amenities and food and beverage. So it is a clean organization, and it's an organization that is more cost effective than what we had. That's all of the comments that I have. I'd like to turn it over now to Ron Metters, who is going to talk about the water rate increase.
Can everyone hear me okay now?
Phil Baldwin.
Joined the meeting.
Does everyone have my slides and can hear me okay? So I appreciate y'all giving us the time today to talk about our what we've done here at Big Canoe and the sort of a little bit of history for those that don't attend the board sessions. You know, I try to give an update there where I can each month. This gives a little bit of history about the SLA, our overall condition of the site when we purchased, and then in some of our capital and O&M expenditures. I'd like to, if I could, turn it over to Aaron Accardo. He's our president of our business unit. He wanted to say a few words before I get started. Aaron, if you could chime in. I don't know if you've got capabilities on your mic or not yet, but I'll pause just a minute and see if I can hear you.
Okay, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we got you, Aaron.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. Like Ron said, my name is Aaron Accardo, President of Utilities Inc. of Georgia. With me today, we've of course got Ron Metters, who's our regional manager over the state of Georgia. We've got Alex Williams, who is our vice president over the 3 states in our area, Georgia, Alabama, and Louisiana. And we have Brian Francis with us, who's our financial director. As most of you know, UIG closed on the Big Canoe properties in April of 2018, so right at 2 years ago. And there were significant gaps. As most of you know, a lot of critical needs around the infrastructure that really were spread throughout every area. From the water production site and water distribution site, extreme water loss, wastewater collection, and the treatment side. Don Sudduth, who was the president at that time, after our team had completed all of its diligence and we ran our financial models, we estimated that the total rate increase needed to get the systems to steady state was going to be somewhere north of 50%. We held rates. There was an agreement to hold rate increases for 2 years, which is where we are today. And he estimated that the initial rate increase would be somewhere north, mid-30s% rate increase, just to cover the much needed capital projects to reach that steady state compliance and also the service level improvements that were sorely needed as well. So I'm happy to report that UIG is under that mid 30%. We're looking at a rate increase now of right at 28%. I think it's 27.8 or something like that. So I'm going to hand it back over to Ron now, and Ron's going to run through just some of the capital projects, capital improvements that have been put in place over these last couple of years, and also some of the operating expenses that underpin the service level improvements that we've provided as well. And then I'll give you a little bit of a forward look at the end, and then we'll turn it over to Brian Francis, who will run through a little bit of the high-level view of the rate calculation. And then we'll save all questions to the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our, just a little bit of history and sort of explain what got us here. And you know, this rate increase is fairly significant, but it's needed for us to continue the work that we're doing. Since closing, you know, we walked into a system that was very challenged. We had some significant issues throughout the system. You know, some of the things that bubbled up first or bubbled up most significant to us were the number of outages that the system incurred, and the issues with just reliability and the overall overall poor condition of the pumping systems and distribution system. Some of the things we identified out of that after getting our hands on it and starting to operate for a few months, we had identified the pressure regulating valves, PRVs, that folks hear me talk about from time to time, or quite often actually. They're what regulates the pressure down through the different elevations in the system. Those were, just by the age and visual condition of them, we knew that they were a piece that we would want to approach first. But then once we got in and started operating, we realized that they were a much greater need and a much greater issue than we first thought. Most of them were completely failed or were just patched to the point that we couldn't repair them any further. And they were causing significant pressure issues in the system, which were leading to those 160 something line breaks each year. And we could only go back at the beginning of a couple years to see that consistent 160, 170 breaks per year. But, once we started digging in, that was pretty evident that was recurring for years at Big Canoe. And what the pressures were, what was causing that is pressures would rise because these valves had failed and caused all these lines to exceed their working pressures. Not to get off too much in the weeds, but we knew that was an issue, and so we pushed very hard, or we actually exceeded where we were originally planning to go with the PRVs, and we pushed forward with those and it replaced almost 100%. I think we were right at about 85% of those valves in the first 2 years. So we're ahead of our plan on that because of the results that we get from replacing those. The other thing that was significant at closing was the lack of fail-safe and redundant equipment for the pumping equipment throughout the system. Basically, without these pumps, if they fail, that's what causes large-scale outages, sometimes for extended periods of time. Everyone knows about the outage back in 2015. That was off the back of a main break, which caused a pump failure. The pump failure is what basically compounded out and caused the wider spread outage and the length of that outage. So we knew we wanted to approach that as well. And the third major, key item that I'd say that we attacked or approached to the replacement was water meters. Primarily was age and accuracy of those meters. We knew that revenues were way off, and we weren't calculating or capturing the water that was being used by the customers. So we knew water loss was a piece of our water loss. And then also there was some significant safety concerns with that because of employees climbing up and down the mountain, trying to read meters and parking out in the roads and things like that. So we wanted to address those. So we began to immediately replace those key items. We also uncovered several other unplanned items that we had to replace both in the plant and in the pumping facilities throughout the system. All in all, we had quite a bit of capital that went into place to improve reliability and benefit the customers and benefit us as well, to be able to breathe a little easier while operating this very complex system. So our work all began through a sit down with the POA. I won't get into too much history here, but we all sat down at the very beginning of this and met with one another, gave our history. The POA went out and interviewed some of our other areas that we operate in. We quickly determined that an agreement was needed, so they started drafting the service level agreement between the two parties. Part of this was to develop key performance indicators for UIG, agree on the rate making process and how that's going to be reviewed and performed each year, and then basically to give a level of comfort for both parties to know that we're spending capital prudently, and that we're also trying to do our best to maintain a reasonable level of service and give the customers of Big Canoe a comfort that we're doing the best we can with what we're given in our capital funds. As far as our performance, we met either monthly or bi-monthly with the water committee to make sure that we were in line with what they felt was was best for the community. We're all vested in this. We try to be a part of every community that we service, be engaged to make sure that we're headed in the right direction and that everyone's comfortable with what we're doing. And as far as our KPIs, our key performance indicators, we met those even through, spending a significant amount of capital, doing capital improvements, and through some very challenging conditions early on. We were still in that state of several, main breaks and service line leaks all over the system, and fighting to basically just keep enough water to service the community. That's very significantly changed since then, and so we're in a lot better state. Still a lot of work to do, but we're making strides every day. Wanted to talk a little bit about some of our direct customer benefits. One of the biggest is, we reduce those unplanned outages. We're reducing water loss. Our actual water loss was somewhere in the neighborhood of 78%. We're back down to what Suez was reporting, near that 50% mark. That's a pretty significant change in a 2-year period. We improved that system reliability. We've got redundant pumps and equipment on hand. We've got spares and things like that, so that if something is broken or damaged, we're able to go out and pull it off the shelf and install it. We, as part of our company-wide initiative, we rolled out the My Utility Connect app. This gives the customer quite a few abilities to pay their bill, have service turned on and off. Several very beneficial capabilities there that we feel like well used at Big Canoe. We also operate in Skidaway Island, and they use it there now, and especially during this time, where we're no contact, this app can definitely be a benefit. And then the Eye on Water app that came along with the water meters. If you haven't signed up for this, it's a very useful tool. You can see your use down to the 15-minute interval that you're able to track and set up notifications if you do, your water does indicate a leak. I encourage everyone to jump on and utilize these two apps. And this slide's going over our capital spending. Original plan, we were at 5.1 million for the first, through these first 2 years. We actually found some efficiencies, even though we were well ahead of the plan for PRV replacement. We still found efficiencies, replaced a ton of equipment across the system, and still came in a little under where we were originally thought we would be for capital. I didn't know if Brian Francis, he's on with us. I didn't know if he had any words around this piece or the O&M piece on the next slide. Brian, I'll give you just a chance here to chime in if you want.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we have you, Brian.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think, Ron, you nailed it pretty good. I think the main thing here is when we were looking at the capital investment initially, we were thinking we would need to spend close to $5.2 million. And as we've gone through this period since June 1 of 2018, we've really been able to manage that capital spend and come in under budget. And I think, as Ron mentioned, in addition to that, just looking at the next couple years, you'll see those dollars, absolute dollars, come down. The budget being 2.4 million and 1 million for the next couple years. So the heaviest spend has come through, and we came in under budget. So I think that's all I had, Ron.
Hey, can you hear me? Little issue with the mute here.
Yeah, I can hear you, Ron.
Okay. So that kind of summarizes capital. O&M for 2019, we came in 125,000 below budget. Found a few efficiencies in fuel and utility, power consumption because of reduced pumping, run times on pumping equipment and things like that. We also found some efficiencies in chemical were the two significant ones there. We went to a bulk chemical system where we're not using totes, which is a higher cost. Those things were just found over time, and we're able to, we'll continue to do those kinds of things to shave off these O&M dollars year over year, specifically with the pumping, purchase power and things like that. I feel like we'll get more and more efficient as time goes on, just because of the, getting our hands around water loss and things like that. And then this slide walks through the changes in the rates. As Aaron said, it's a 27.8 or so increase to rates, and this slide exhibits how each rate will be affected. The changes specifically to base rate for the residential and commercial, that moved from 66 to 84.45. I won't walk through each one of these, but basically we did a straight line across the board percentage increase for each line here. We did change the volumetric breakpoints for the tier structure for the residential consumption, or actually for residential and commercial. We moved that first tier down from 15,000 to 5,000. Try to encourage a bit of water conservation where we can. Brian, did you have anything to?
Yeah, I think, you summarized it pretty good, Ron. I think the main notes are that we applied the rate increase across the board evenly at the same 27.8%, and changed the breakpoints on the tiers to encourage conservation. And I think those are the two main things. We really looked at the rate increase a number of different ways and found that the across the board rate increase evenly made the most sense in this situation. So that was the main 2 points that we were focused on when we were going through the rate making.
Thank you, Brian. That covers our portion of this slide presentation. I believe up next is going to be Don Rolander. He's going to speak for the Water Committee. Bob, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything there for Don's introduction, but that's it for our portion.
Oh, go right ahead, Ron. Don.
Thanks, Bob. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we got you, Don.
Yes.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to introduce the committee members, great residents of Big Canoe who've given a lot of time to this effort. Amy Trovenbaum has a BBA from Emory, Master's in Public Accounting from Georgia State. She's a CPA in the state of Georgia, has 30 years business experience in accounting, in hospitality, healthcare, and banking entities, and account management. and she's current chairperson of the Big Canoe Finance Committee. David Howe has a BA in economics from St. Lawrence, an MBA from Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, career in small company venture funding. Phil Legg, our newest member, has a Bachelor of Science in Industrial and Systems Engineering from Georgia Tech, 40 years experience in the food and beverage industry with 14 years at Coke and 12 years at Chick-fil-A in charge of water quality and purification. He's a great addition to the board. Ralph Ripley has an undergraduate and master's degree in business and management, a 29-year U.S. Army career, and founded a company that specializes in credit and risk management with a footprint in 44 countries. 3 years on the Big Canoe Finance Committee, 2 years as chairman, 3 years on the Lakes and Waters Committee. Dave Dickey has a BSCE from Davis-Nelkins College, an MSCE in civil engineering from Penn State, background in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, 7 years in water resource and flood control, a district manager for the New York State Water Resource Department, and 33 years at ExxonMobil Research and Engineering, dealing with all aspects of water supply and management. Bob Squall has a BS in civil engineering, an MBA in management from Georgia State, and 42 years
Join the meeting
as a civil engineer. I lost my train of thought with that beep. Hang on a second. And wastewater system installation, water system installation, design, and construction. I'm an attorney with 44 years experience in land use, land acquisition and development, commercial lending. I served on the board of directors and on the executive loan committee of 2 community banks and spent time as chairman of the administrative board at North Fulton Hospital. I served on the Big Canoe Land Use Committee. I want to talk about our former chairman. Our first chairman was Hollis Latham, who was the initial water committee chairman and who was chairman of the Cherokee County Water Authority for over 20 years. He's an ideal choice for the first chairman of this committee. Our other past member is John Slim, who had a background in international banking. I can't imagine a better board to work with than this board. This committee was chartered in 2018 for the purpose of providing appropriate oversight of the provisions of the Third Amendment of the trust deed and the service level and operating agreement, which you'll hear referred to as the SLOA or the SLA. That is the agreement between Big Canoe and UIG. The committee's oversight primarily focuses on UIG's actions relative to improving the water system by deploying capital, improving the efficiency of daily operations, reviewing calculations of proposed water rates, and assessing whether the legal provisions of either document have been breached, and also to advise the board of the need to retain legal, financial, and/or engineering consultants to serve as subject matter experts to assist in representing the interest of the POA and the Big Canoe property owners. The committee's met regularly since its formation and has examined the pertinent operations of UIG, from repairs and proposed improvements to examining the financial records related to Big Canoe, including planned capital improvements and forecasting billing rates. Particular compliments need to go to David Howe and Amy Trovenbaum for their work on the financial end of this transaction. Their performance has been outstanding. This report is a summary of our findings based on the duties we have undertaken. The POA made the right choice in hiring an outside water company to operate the water system. The POA avoided a substantial capital outlay and the expense of hiring an operator once the acquisition would have been made. We believe as a committee that UIG was the right choice for Big Canoe. We have met at least quarterly since June of 2018 and much more frequently in the last 6 months. A representative of UIG has attended every meeting we've had, and UIG has made complete and transparent disclosures of their business operations. We've been discussing the rate increase with UIG since June of 2019. As of April 2018, we've determined that they inherited a water system and water treatment system which were poorly maintained, suffered from deferred or non-existent maintenance, conducted repairs only on an emergency basis, and had no preventive maintenance or capital investment program in place. Water meters did not work. Nearly 80% of the water produced was lost as non-revenue water. Pumping stations did not meet Georgia minimum standards for public water systems. There were no redundant systems to ensure continued water supply in the event of a power outage or pump failure. There were over 200 leaks in the infrastructure. Pressure reducing valves throughout the system were beyond their useful lives, leaking or in various stages of failure. The system was in poor shape due to neglect. The wastewater treatment system had been poorly maintained and or neglected. Much of the equipment was beyond its useful life. UIG came in and has commenced an aggressive program of leak repairs. They have replaced almost every individual water meter in Big Canoe with state-of-the-art equipment. The meters can be read remotely and property owners can access real-time information about water use. That's called Eye on Water, and you'll find it on our website and on the UIG website. Billing is now accurate and will increase revenue because of that. Many pressure reducing valves were replaced, which increased the dependability of the water supply and eliminated water loss from leaking valves. Ron, next slide. Thank you. Since April of 2018, when UIG came on board, water loss continues to decline significantly. It's down from 78% to 50% now. The likelihood of a major water outage has been almost eliminated. Water system reliability has increased significantly. Revenue from water use has seen an increase due to water meters capturing the actual consumption. What a novel idea. There's a capital improvement plan in place to continue to stabilize and improve the water system. A new tank will be installed at the top of Deer Run Ridge, and remaining tanks will be repaired and improved to extend their useful lives. The wastewater treatment system has been stabilized, and there are plans for capital improvements to sustain that reliability and improve its function. The benefit from all of these repairs and upgrades will be an efficient system which operates economically and dependably. I want to talk briefly about the rate increase, and then I'm going to turn it over to David Howe, who can give you an excellent explanation. We're paying the price to bring our water system and wastewater treatment systems up to a functional, sustainable level. We come from a state of impending disaster. That improvement does not come free. Accordingly, beginning May 1st, Utilities Inc. of Georgia needs to increase overall rates for water service by 28% across the board. How's the rate increase determined? It's determined by the method set out in the SLOA or SLA between Big Canoe and UIG. That agreement has been in place since 2018. Ron, change slides. David Howe, please take over.
Very well. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Good. I think we all understand the basics here. UIG purchased Big Canoe Utilities, invested funds in that business, and that business after expenses generates net income, which represents UIG's return on their investment. Now, back in 2018, when the purchase agreement was negotiated, the POA and UIG settled on a 12% factor, a 12% return, which they could calculate and receive on net book value of the assets. That amount is called the required return. I'm going to use some terms and I'll give you an explanation in the next slide, which I think will clarify a lot of this. Now, in the last 2 years, as Don mentioned, we have spent on the committee a considerable amount of time, three of us in particular, making sure that we understood the rate calculation process. And frankly, we had some difficulties with the original calculations, which were exhibited in the original service level agreement. We did some work with Brian Francis, and I want to compliment Brian and thank him for his very open and cooperative help with us. And we decided to rewrite and specify the calculation process ambiguous, and we created an amendment to the agreement, which you may have received and you can get. If you go back to the announcement on this meeting, you'll see a link which will go to these agreements, specifically the amendment and an example, which I'm going to use in just a minute to detail how the rate calculation takes place. There are basically three questions that rate calculation boils to. First, the definition of net book value, which is a financial description based on the balance sheet of the company. The second question is the relationship of the required return, the 12% calculation, to the net income of the water system. The net income, which represents the return to Utilities Inc. for their investment in our water system. And the third question is, how do we convert that to a rate calculation? I'm going to describe it in words, as I said, and then we'll go and look at an example in just a second. The first question, what is net book value? Net book value is essentially the assets of the company, which represents the investment that Utilities Inc. has made in our business, minus the accumulated depreciation on those assets. These are expenses. This is an expense which has occurred every year. In most cases of 30 or 40 years, which is the useful life of these assets. There's a couple of small adjustments that are made, but the final bottom line is net. When you make those adjustments and subtract the depreciation, net book value is calculated, and that's the number that the 12% calculation is made on. And it's called the required return, as I mentioned. Now, question number two, what's the relationship between the required return of 12% on net book value and the income that's generated by the business? In the case of 2019, which is the year in which we measure now the rate increase, the net income of the business was less than the required return, the 12% calculation. What that means is that UIG is entitled to recover that difference by increasing rates in the following year. I think it's important to point out here that UIG is extending the recovery of that difference over the coming 12-month period. As I mentioned, in this case, that difference is an after-tax difference, and that's the final step in calculating what is going to be, and that is to convert that after-tax figure to a pre-tax figure, because in the year 2020, that recovery of that difference is going to be taxed by the state and the federal government, the normal taxation, to get it down to the basic recovery amount that they're due. Now, I want to go on to the next slide, Ron, if you'd please go there for me. Here's a hypothetical calculation that I think explains fairly clearly what we're talking about here. The gross plant in service, we're using an example of, say, $14 million in investment, and that's pretty close to what has actually been spent by Utilities Inc. Accumulated depreciation, we're using an example of $400,000. An item called contributions in aid of construction. This is really it's a small amount, but it has to do with the tap fees that are charged for connecting a new residence to the water system. It is not a basis, it's not used in the basis of calculating rates, so it's taken out of gross plant in service to calculate net book value. There's two other items, and that is the working capital items, current assets, current liabilities. That amounts to 160,000 in this example, so that the assets of the company is $13.7 million, as you can see on the slide. The required rate of return is a multiplication of that 13.69 million times 18%, excuse me, times 12%, which is the required return. That amount is 1,642,000. In this example, I'm assuming income from the business from Utilities Inc. of Georgia, our Big Canoe system, of $978,000, leaving an amount of $667,000 that is needs to be recovered by utilities in order to reach their 12% return. Now, the calculation that follows is not as complicated as it looks. The combined rate of taxation, because state tax is a deductible expense, the combined rate of taxation is 25.54. You use a simple algebraic equation and convert that 667,800 after-tax amount to a pre-tax amount, and that amounts to $896,000. If you take the two tax rates of 5.75 federal and multiply 896,857 by those factors, you come right back down to the 667,000, which is what they're recovering after tax. That's basically what we do. And the average bill as a result of this, well, the next step is the step which involves a model which has been put together by us and Brian together. And this helps where the revenues are coming in from and what the percentage is that has to be increased in order for the water system to produce the $667,000 difference that needs to be collected by utilities. As has been said, that amounts this year to a 28 plus percent, a 27.96% increase in water rates. The average bill is going to go roughly from $79 to a little bit over $100. We're figuring the cash value is going to be about $22. Now that's on the average user, which interestingly in our system is about 3,000 gallons, just a little over 3,000 gallons per month. And if you apply those gallons to the rate factors, which have already been presented, you come up with roughly those figures, $79 to $80 average. It'll be about $100 to $101 on the new pricing structure. And I think that about covers it, Don.
Again, can everyone hear me? We're planning for the future with UIG, developing key performance indicators for operations to keep us on track. Our accounting team and auditing team is reviewing the UIG capital budget. We're also planning for another on-site tour of their facilities so that we can look in the doors and in the windows and go in the plants and see what actually goes on in Big Canoe, how you get your water and how your wastewater is treated. In summary, or in closing, as a committee, we confirm that the rate increase calculation is in compliance with the SLOA. We report that UIG has been completely open and transparent with the Water Committee. We further report that we find them to be an excellent business partner for Big Canoe, who is making a sincere and diligent effort to provide dependable, quality water and wastewater treatment services to Big Canoe. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. I really appreciate that. In all my years in Big Canoe and looking at different committees, I have never seen a committee with a set of resumes that equals what you have put together. And we've got some awfully talented people in a lot of different areas, but it's impressive. And the results are impressive because of the skills that you put in place. I appreciate it very much. Okay, next, the third thing on the agenda is food and beverage. I think everybody in Big Canoe and maybe beyond Big Canoe is aware that we had a $750,000 food and beverage loss in 2019, raising a lot of questions. A lot of those questions are going to be answered right now when Gautam presents what he sees as the causes of 2019 underperformance, and in 2020, what are some of the action plans in order to address those? So Gautam, it's all yours.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Crouch. Just going to share my screen here. So before I start, I just want to also recognize all the employees here at Big Canoe. This has been a very difficult time for everybody with the coronavirus, and I applaud everybody for their hard work. Not just obviously Ricky and his team are doing an outstanding job making decisions and keeping us abreast of everything that's going on, but also the gentlemen that are working in the golf shop, the guys and girls that are working in the restaurant, the kids that are working outside at the bag drop. It's been a very difficult time. We appreciate everybody's patience during this time and hard work. We really want to say thank you to the board for making a great decision to allow us to continue to pay the full-time hourly and even the part-time hourly people that are here. They're doing a great job, and we really do appreciate it, because without them, I don't think all the decisions that we're able to make at a leadership team level would even be occurring if they weren't coming to work every day and doing the best they can for the community. So like I said, we applaud the board for making that decision, and I really want to say a sincere thank you to all of the associates that are coming here every day to keep the community going. So let's talk about food and beverage. So what I'm going to cover for a little bit here is just the 2020 Clubhouse review. We've obviously talked about what 2019 was all about, and a lot of questions about what is going to happen in 2020. What are the changes that are going to be made? So I want to be able to do that and cover where we're headed in 2020 also. So very simply, I will give you a very high-level look at the financial review of 2019. So as you can see in front of you, this year or last year, the community made $2.15 million in food and beverage. I'm missing something. Oh, I hit that. Sorry, everybody. We're good. Thank you. All right, operator error, I apologize. So as you can see in front of you here, the 2019, the community made $2.15 million in total clubhouse revenue sales. So that is going to be a conglomerate of sales inside of the clubhouse, food truck, beverage cart, duffers, and everything. So $2.15 million. Total net income last year was a loss of negative $770,000. How did we get to that negative $770,000 is very interesting. Obviously, there's three major areas that we look at when it comes to the breakdown of revenues when you get to the net income. So first is going to be labor. So last year, Big Canoe Community spent 76% of the total revenues was labor associated. So anything that has to do with restaurant, food and beverage related back to the revenues, we spent 76%. So for every dollar that we made, 76 cents went back into labor. Okay, we also had 40% a cost of goods margin. So what that means is the cost of goods, so that's going to be food, beverage, beer, wine, liquor. We had 40 cents in every dollar that we sold. As far as operating costs go, we had 20% operating costs. So again, for every dollar that we made, 20% went back into operating costs. So what does an operating cost consist of? So that is going to be anything as basic as paper products, straws, napkins, any utilities that we pay that come out of the restaurant and the clubhouse. So all of that sat in operating. So you can see those percentages are 76, 40, and 20. If you look at it from a dollar perspective, the 76% in labor relates back to $1.63 million in total labor. So again, that includes all of the employees at the point of sale, any management that was involved in the restaurant, any management that was involved in, like I said, duffers, the beverage cart, swim club, all of that goes into labor. As far as our cost of goods go, that 40% that we looked at attributed or came back to $860,000 in total cost of goods. So again, cost of goods is wine, beer, beverage, food, liquor. And operating costs were 20%, adding up to $430,000. So if you just do the math on that, that's how you get to the negative $770,000. As far as the operational review goes, we were here in a consulting role for roughly 4 or 5 months trying to figure out, what exactly makes up this big loss? What is happening? So I can tell you just through some high-level bullet points, and there's a lot more granular detail that goes into that, but from a very high-level standpoint, I have a few bullet points to share. The first is going to be really, it's a lack of leadership. I'm not here to point fingers. I'm not here to tell that we had the wrong people in wrong positions, but really what it was is Big Canoe Communities has a lot of moving parts. And unless the actual structure is made where the leadership in the restaurant and inside the clubhouse can focus on exactly what is happening on a day-to-day basis and develop systems that are going to make the community and in the restaurant the processes better, there was just a little bit of a disconnect. So when I say FOH, BOH, I mean front of the house and back to the house. There really was not a line of leadership. I believe we kind of came to work every day, did the best we could, to nobody's detriment here. Were we doing things that were wrong? We just didn't have good processes, and I think there was just some poor leadership that was happening back of the house, front of the house. Second bullet point is I think we lacked a little bit of identity. One of the things is about Big Canoe is it is a community. I mean, and this is a very big community. You guys make up a very large portion of the county. But as far as it comes back to the restaurant, we had a lack of identity. We weren't sure if we were a club. We weren't sure if we were a restaurant. We weren't sure if we were a resort. So we made a lot of decisions based on not really knowing what we were. And I think going forward, we understand that we're here for the community, and we need to make decisions based on what identity we are and have that and move forward based on that. Number one, inconsistent food quality. I don't care where you go. If you get one meal one way the first day and you come back 3 days later and the food is inconsistent, it's very difficult to keep a steady stream of customers. So there was some inconsistent food quality, inconsistent sales pricing. When I say sales, I don't mean discounted pricing. I just say the sticker price of items was very inconsistent. We did some banquets at X. We did some banquets at Y. Some golf tournaments were at X. Some golf tournaments were at Y. We were very inconsistent on our pricing. We weren't sticking to the actual margin levels that we need to for Big Canoe. Poor menu development. One of the things that we say is we cannot be everything to everybody. And if somebody gives us a suggestion in the restaurant, it's okay to try to make that happen and get that actual wine that they want. And it's okay also to be able to say, unfortunately, we can't carry that. We cannot carry 50 different types of wine. We can't carry 100 different types of beer. And the same thing happens with menu development, is we have to be able to cross-utilize the items that we have. We cannot have just one item that sits in the freezer that we only use for one specific item and it never gets used again, because eventually that inventory, which is cash, goes into the garbage. So I think we had just poor menu development. Lots of items, lots of inconsistent items as far as the menu development. We need to be utilized. Low associate morale and retainment. Jasper is a little bit of a difficult area to find, and I don't want to say good people, because it's not about finding good people. It's about developing good people. It's about developing good associates, and I think we just had a low morale in 2019. I think we struggled with, because the food was inconsistent, a lot of the out front associates were getting, for lack of a better way to say it, they're just getting beat up based on the fact that the food is inconsistent. That's not their fault. They're there to provide a service, the best customer service that they can. But when the food is not good, the associate morale gets a little bit low, and that leads to an issue with retainment, that we have constant turnover. And as all of you know, in Big Canoe, a lot of you have led teams of people. You guys are leaders in industry. You can see the cost of retaining people and bringing in new associates is even more expensive than anything you'll ever do. Every time we have to lose somebody and bring somebody in, the cost to retrain, reprogram, and go through all the process is very expensive. There was a lack of a training program. I think because the direction might have been a little bit confusing, like I said before, there was a little bit of inconsistency as far as the leadership. There was no training program, so what we were doing is we were almost in essence giving somebody a name tag and a beautiful Big Canoe, Big Canoe community shirt and saying, good luck to you. Again, and that's just the lack of some resources and not being able to obviously lead as effectively as we wanted to. So the training program, when that turns to inconsistencies on a service level, kitchen inefficiencies, I should say, storage. There's things in food and beverage, first in, first out. When you buy product, things that come in the earliest stay up front. As they move in, you go from the back to the front, so you're not putting out, you're not using the old product, last. There's some inefficiencies there. There's some storage issues. So those are things that we've cleaned up. But again, because when you get to those high cost levels, a lot of things end up going in the garbage based on kitchen inefficiencies. Prep. If you prep too much and you don't reuse it, you're going to throw those things in the garbage. Inconsistent pay rate schedule. I think we did some hiring last year with an inconsistent. We were starting people at X rate. We were starting some people at Y rate. We were doing some things to keep the pay rate schedule inconsistent, and I think we need to make sure that that's consistent. The revenue outlets maybe were not used correctly, whether it's Duffers, the swim club, the food truck. Those are opportunities for Big Canoe to obviously create not just some revenues, because it's not necessarily all about revenues, but it's to create some value back to the residents that live in Big Canoe and give them other areas to go and enjoy the food and beverage experience. I think we just had some poor planning on how those areas were used. We need to do a better job of making the food there delicious. We need to make sure that the training is top notch. We need to make sure that there's leadership and management in those areas. Those outlets, hopefully in 2020, we have a much better game plan going into the year than we did in years past. And, lastly, I think there's just, when I say lack of attention to the business, like I said, I think there was just some inconsistent leadership, some inconsistent management. And when I say management, I mean management of systems. I'm much more big into the leadership and than I am into management, but you do have to manage systems, obviously. So we just need to pay better attention to the business. So in 2020, there's three metrics that you see in front of you. One is the labor metric, one is the cost of goods metric, and one is the operating cost metric. The biggest area that we need to be able to control is labor. And I will say that because maybe we had a poor training system last year, because maybe we didn't do as good of a job on the hiring as we did, what we did is we ended up throwing labor at our problems. So when I say that, I mean on a busy Saturday night, if you have good systems in place and you have good procedures in place, you have individuals that are trained on those systems and on those policies and those procedures, if you do that correctly, you're able to make it through the evening without feeling as if I needed more people. Now, we have gone through this and obviously said, what does the labor look like based on Every single night of the week, whether it's Monday all the way through Sunday, what does it look like that we need with good management systems, good procedures to get through? And we feel that, we can cut the labor down to 55%. That is still fairly high in our industry when it comes to communities and quote-unquote clubs and restaurants. I know for some of you that were in the restaurant business, you will say, my God, labor percentage is very high, 55%. It is still fairly high, but again, we still need to be able to service the community as best we can. So the labor reduction is key there. We don't want to throw people at our problems. We need to do better on training and management and leadership. The second part is cost of goods sold, 40%. Again, that is a very conservative number. And when I say cost of goods, I'm talking food, beer, beverage, wine, and liquor all the way through. That number will also continue to get reduced. We need to make sure that we keep putting out, beautiful food that is tasty in a timely manner. So we're keeping that cost of goods roughly at 40%, reducing operating costs to 18%. It is a small reduction in operating costs. There are some areas that we're looking at right now, for example, linens. There are some things in the industry that don't force you to have linen. You can go to more of a spandex type of thing during banquets where those chafing dishes sit underneath versus the cost of linen. Those are much more expensive. So we are looking at that. And obviously with Bobby Jones, there's some economies of scale that you'll also get a few discounts here and there when it comes to the operating costs. So if you take those three metrics and just tie it back to what happened in 2019, if we take those efficiencies and turn those into dollars, the labor will actually get reduced to $1.18 million. The cost of goods will remain at $860,000, and the operating costs come down to $387,000, which now gives you a net income of $277,000, which is roughly $500,000 less than what it was in 2019, based on changing the efficiencies. The glaring one is labor. I know everybody will look at the labor number and say, oh my God, we spent $1.6 million in labor. We can get that number down, like I said, through efficiencies. I'm really beating up that word efficiencies, but really that's what it does come down to. So as we make our way through the slide here, 2020 operating goals. When I say the word reinvent, I don't know if it's as much of a reinvention as it is more of an understanding of what we want to do with these systems and these different these different operating areas. But Duffers is an opportunity. We can do a better job at Duffers. We can put out better food, fresher food. I think we can make the experience. I know that tends to be more of a golf-centric type of area, but because the restaurant is not open for breakfast, there may be ways for us to do some things at Duffers. So our team is currently looking at that. The food truck is another opportunity area, and the swim. So we need to look at reinvent those concepts that we have over there. Number two is implement new and creative clubhouse programming. There are some wonderful events that happen at Big Canoe. There really are. I know that between Terry that does her events, and I know that the girls that work downstairs in the clubhouse, they do some really great events. There's some things we need to look at. Are there opportunities to create the restaurant to be more of a destination for the Big Canoe property owners? Is there a way that we can bring and be more creative in bringing people to the clubhouse? That will always start with, I'm going to skip a bullet, with food quality. If we cannot get the food quality to a point where you trust us that you're always going to get a great meal, you're always going to get a delicious meal, you're always going to get great service, then there's nothing that we can come up with that will ever change your mind. So that food quality is very consistent. I feel really good about our new chef, Albert. I know that the restaurant right now is closed and we're doing to-go, so several of you have not met him, but I think you will feel his energy and his love for food and beverage. I think you'll see that. Obviously, we have Jonathan who's doing an outstanding job. Chef David is in there. Robert is new to us, but they're working very hard right now on getting that food quality. Number three, I'll jump back up, is develop menu to cross-utilize products and prices appropriately. Really, that's business 101. We want to give you the best food that we can. We want to give you the most delicious food, but we also need to be very cognizant of what that cost looks like and be able to cross-utilize products throughout the menu. Skip down is solve kitchen inefficiencies and inventory controls. Again, I know you have not been to the restaurant in some time, but you will see that the way our storage is done has changed very much. The way that we are putting product into the freezers is a little bit different right now, which is more along the lines of regular industry, not more of a puzzle. There's a lot better systems back there, so inventory controls. Develop a consistent clubhouse usage plan and pricing for all clubs. There are, and I believe it's 85 clubs that are here at Big Canoe. We love all of the clubs. We just need to be very consistent on how we allow the clubhouse to be used and how we price those things. You know, I think we catch ourselves a little bit in 2019 where we offered XYZ menu to one club at, you know, X price, and we offered it to another club at Y price. And maybe in some instances we kind of raced ourselves to the bottom, meaning because we were offering lower prices, we kept coming down and down and down. So we just need to be consistent in what we do. It is a restaurant. We did lose $770,000 last year. We need to be cognizant of how we price everything that we do. You know, reduce the banquet pay and shared gratuity pool. When you see the word reduction and you see the word pay, everybody kind of feels like, my God, what have we done? The reality of it is, what we were doing at Big Canoe is we had a price or a rate that we were paying all of the associates who worked in the restaurant. And then what we did is when they worked banquets, we raised that rate. We raised that rate so high that what it did is it actually cut into any of the margins that we were making. We've now come up with a calculation that allows both sides to win. It allows the associates to actually make a little bit more money, so we keep their rate low, which helps the property owners in the community, or I should say the POA, reduce that overall payroll, yet keep that gratuity line going and in a share with the actual restaurant. What that looks like mathematically, I don't have here, but I will say we needed to do that. We have made that change. There has not been anybody that's on the associate level that has says, this does not make any sense. There's no angry servers out there. Actually, this works in their favor. It obviously works in our favor because we're able to control labor more than we have ever before. Managing events using a break-even system. You know, the water spreadsheet that was in front of us just a few minutes ago shows how the mathematics plays out. And when we do any events here at Big Canoe, we should be doing the same type of thing. We should be making sure that anything that we price has the price of the event, which takes into consideration the food cost, the cost of labor, and any type of operating. We have to get into the process that making sure that at worst, everything we do is going to break even. Anything that we do, obviously we want it to continue to make money, but when we do these events, we have to get to a point where the property is making some money, in worst case, breaking even. We just have to manage that up front versus quoting prices without really understanding what it is that we're putting out there. It's beautiful to do all types of events within the community. What's not beautiful is when you do the autopsy on it at the end of the week and say, how did we do? We say we lost so many thousands of dollars. Yes, everybody had a great time, but ultimately we lost a lot of money, and that contributes to that big loss. Create consistent banquet menus. Again, that goes back to pricing. And obviously market Big Canoe as a wedding destination. The idea here is not to take away your clubhouse, not to take away your restaurant, but when we have opportunity to sell weddings as a destination in this mountain, the beautiful mountains that we have here, we can move forward and market that and keep the spaces there. Implement a new organizational chart. Like I said before, there are things where we lacked on leadership, we lacked on management of processes. Our new organizational chart is going to be much better. I think we could pay more attention to exactly what is happening within that business unit. That $770,000 loss is a business unit. We need to do a better job. That organizational chart is going to allow us to pay more attention and focus more on the day-to-day operations. Continuous service and technical training. I can tell you over the last 5 or 6 months, we've done this 5 to 6 to 7 times with not only the front of the house, but the back of the house. I believe and I know that when we open back up after everything passes, I know that you will see a great change in exactly how the technical sides of things are done, plus the service sides are being done, but that's going to be all throughout food and beverage. We need to create a roadmap for associate growth. We have to make the associates in the restaurant feel as if they can grow. You know, Jonathan is an outstanding example of somebody who can grow into something here at Big Canoe. He started out in the kitchen, then he started out on the floor, and over the past month, I've seen such a change in just his overall attitude and his overall desire to be included. He is so focused on that curbside. I can see him every day. He is doing it. He's doing an outstanding job, but that is something we need to be able to do for all of the associates. We need to give them a roadmap for growth. That's going to help us with retention. That's going to have people obviously very happy when they come here every single day. And I can see those changes slowly happening. Improve recruiting and retainment obviously goes back to the associate growth roadmap. We have to do a great job of recruiting talent. We have to do a better job of when we get people, when we get new associates, is making them feel included in what is happening and making them feel as if, hey, there is growth for me here. And we train them, obviously, for their skill set that they need. They're not out there giving a name tag and a shirt, and here you go, make it up as you go along. There has to be able to do that. Therefore, we go into the retainment. Oops. I will close with these very three basic things before I turn it back to Mr. Crouch, but the increased leadership is extremely important. You know, I think we were dying for that, the increased leadership. Being able to give an opportunity to Chef Albert to lead that back of the house team is going to prove dividends for us. I think to be able to give someone like Jonathan the guidance through a new individual like Robert is going to prove dividends for us. Number two is manage processes. We have to be better with processes. And when I say processes, I mean just something simple as opening and closing procedures. We need to be better with opening and closing procedures. We need to be better at how the processes are in the back of the house. We need to be better with processes of just something as simple as tableside dining. If we can manage those processes and involve leadership and allow leadership to lead because they now have great processes and systems in place, you will see dividends on a bottom line on a bottom line. And the third thing, which I think is obviously the most single important thing, is to build confidence back in the property owners. I have met so many great property owners over the past, not just month, but 5 months prior to that. And everybody's dying for great food. Everybody's dying for great service. And everybody's dying for this to be a site where they can come up and make it a place, a destination, like it used to be years and years ago. We need to build confidence back in you that when you come up here and you get a meal, it is going to be delicious. You're going to get service with a smile, and you're going to see the value in what you see. And before I kind of go any further, I hope everybody's able to take advantage, and maybe this is a public service announcement, but I hope everybody tests and comes out and tries the curbside dining. Not because we're asking you to come spend money, but because I think part of building confidence before we open back up is seeing the change in the food quality and is seeing the change in the service that you're even getting at your car right now. Because this is an opportunity, even though we're closed, for us to build confidence back in you through something that is so simple as basic curbside dining. Because if we cannot do this properly, then we're going to lose confidence when we open back up. So hopefully you get a chance to see that. So that's my presentation. I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Crouch, and I do appreciate everybody's time and patience, like I said before, during this time. So thank you very much.
Go, Tom. Thank you very much. The property owners have been waiting for a long time to get an understanding of what was going on in 2019. And I think you've given a great deal of insight for people to think about. We're going to go into question and answers. Let me say one thing that we've done differently here. We made the conscious decision to distribute the presentation materials ahead of time. So property owners had a chance to take a look at them, study them, think of what their questions were. And as I said, they could submit those questions in writing earlier or real time via phone now. Before I turn it over to Candace, who's going to manage that process, has been keeping track of those issues that have come in and has assigned the responsible individual to answer that. I have one that came in directly to me. I'll answer that and then I'll turn it over to you, Candy. It was from Michelle Toops, and Michelle had a series of questions relating to the capital contribution fee. And what I can say is it's premature to answer those at this time. We've got some more work to be done. We aren't here waiting with the proposal to come. We're going to have multiple town hall meetings where we're going to be getting the feedback And I am sure that in that process, much, if not all of what Michelle is looking at will be answered. So that is it. I will turn it over to Candace for the written Q's, nays, and it's all yours, Candy.
Okay, well, thank you, Bob. There were actually 7 that came in, and I believe we'll see that about 50% of them or more have been answered by the discussions today, particularly regarding water. But let me start out with a couple questions for Gotan, one of which I think he responded directly to the homeowner, Mark Trechtenbroit, regarding the math accuracy of the documents in the presentation. And I think Gotan responded to him directly. It was not a specific area that he was concerned with, so Gotan responded to him. Another comment came from Jerry Justice, and he said he hoped that Bobby Jones Links are continuing to pay all employees and continue to pay health care for them. Gotan, could you just update us on that for the community?
Yeah, absolutely. So nothing has changed with anybody's pay at this point. Like I said, the board has allowed us to make a great decision with the current associates here, is that anybody who is currently working full-time hourly is going to continue to get the 6-month average that they work. So we've gone back 6 months, so basically March backwards, and averaged what everybody's done. And we're taking those hours. So if your hours have been reduced, for example, if you're a full-time server in the restaurant and the only hours we can give you right now is maybe 8 hours, but you averaged over those past 6 months, 38 hours, then we're going to pay you the additional 30 hours to make you whole. And that's a program that we're going to run for the next 30 days and then relook at where we are. All the part-time hourly employees are going to get 50% of that 6-month average. So it's an outstanding decision. It was an outstanding approval that was made. But yes, as far as the question goes, everybody's being taken care of. Health insurance will continue, so everybody's going to be just the way they are. So that's no issues there.
Thanks, Gotan. The next 3 questions related to Utilities, Inc. And I think these have been answered, but I do want to go over those that came in from our property owners. One was from Brad Salmon regarding that he noticed that the water increase stated that they needed to give the property owners a 60-day notice. And today is March 25th, and that's not 60 days. And I think Ron responded to him actually yesterday, stating the 60-day notice was to the board of directors and not the property owners. But we obviously worked very quickly to make sure we had scheduled this meeting as quickly as soon as we had found out about the rate increase. The second question was from the Ardens regarding, please ask Utilities Inc. to supply a timeframe repair of the well houses on Quail Cove. After multiple conversations with Utilities Inc., they are still rotting away and unsightly. So I don't know whether this is best answered by Ron Metters, if he's still available.
Hi, Candace.
Okay.
Yeah, so we actually have quite a bit of aesthetic improvements that we'd like to make. We were really trying to focus highly on the operational and upgrades needed to keep, basically just keep everyone in water. But we are going to address those well houses. They had fell back to the back burner, and I talked with Casey actually last night and tried to find how soon we could get to those, and I think we'll be able to get to those in the coming weeks. Even with everything that's going on, we can isolate and get a contractor in there to address those.
Okay, thanks, Ron. The other 2 questions related to water was just from an Nancy Dyster, just concerned about encouraging the board to delay the rate increase requested by utilities. And I think that was well explained by Ron and Don and also David. But if any of you all have anything further to elaborate other than what you all we discussed in the last probably almost 30 minutes. But I thought you all did an excellent job of explaining the math as to why it occurred and so forth. The last question was from Lori Trockenbroy regarding what are the thoughts on short-term rentals at Big Canoe considering Blue Ridge prohibitions. I know we've been in communications with our attorney over the last 24 to 48 hours regarding access and so forth. Bob, do you want to take that?
Yes, Candace, thanks. I'm an alum of being on the board, and unfortunately, this is the second time we've been through. First one was an H1N1 virus back in 2006, and tried to resurrect the conversations that we had with our then attorney about what authority we did have and did not have in closing the gates. And we came up kind of dry. So one of the things we are doing, GoTom is collecting lessons learned. And at the end of this pandemic crisis that we're in, we'll go have an after action review and figure out what we could have done better, what we did well. One of those things in my to-do list to make sure it happens is that we do document the whole thing about gates. It's a very complex question because we have full-time property owners, part-time property owners, we have timeshare, we have renters, we have relatives, we have just a myriad of different people. So I can't give you a good answer today. I can tell you we are committed to get some good answer in the future.
Okay, those were the 7 emails that we had through last night into this morning.
All right, we have some questions from our phone calls and YouTube stream. Are you ready to take those? Bob, are you ready to take questions from the audience? Can't hear him. Bob, you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Third time's a charm. Yeah, I'm ready. Fire away and we'll see who's the right person to answer the question.
All right, we've taken a best guess on each of these, so you want to post that one? So Andrew Crane, lot 3260 asks, what are the basics of getting water losses below 50%? Do we have someone from Utilities Inc. that would like to take that one?
Yeah, so I can take that one if hopefully everyone can hear me. So to date, we've had pretty low hanging fruit, I guess you'd say, with, you know, we had the 200 plus leaks. We had some additional leaks that were identified in a leak survey, but, you know, we're whittling those down to, I don't know the exact number, but it's very low now. And going forward from here, we're still going to continue the last few PRVs to help with pressures and some of the loss. You know, that should change loss somewhat because some of those are actually leaking. But going forward, we'll wind up doing another leak survey, and then we'll also be installing district meters to be able to target the specific areas and go in and search for leaks in those areas. Another piece of it is service line replacements. We're moving to a proactive project for replacing those. Those are by and large the biggest culprit for leaks right now in Big Canoe, and we're going to a systematic approach of replacing those to reduce the loss.
All right, thank you, Ron. And our next question is from Sandy Lipkowitz, lot 2221. And she asks, what employees are included in the 76% food beverage labor costs?
Yeah. So the employees, if you just look at every isolated food and beverage unit, so if you think inside the clubhouse, it's going to be all the front of the house servers. It's going to be all the people in the kitchen. It's going to be all the sales ladies that work downstairs, the banquet sales. It's going to be anybody that works in Duffers. It's going to be any of the food and beverage managers. It's going to be anybody that works at the swim club in the restaurant, or in the swim club restaurant. It's going to be anybody that worked part of the food truck. I mean, anything that has to do where there is a food and beverage preparation of food, transaction of food, sales of food. The only non-person who's included in that would be John the houseman, but he is obviously part of the bringing together the banquets and things like that. So it's everybody who, like I said, presents food, makes food, sells food.
All right, thank you, Gautam. Our next question is from John Hutto, lot 2062. What are the disinfection procedures that are in place relative to the golf carts between uses?
Well, in between, what we're trying to do is the kids that are working inside in the cart facility, you know, obviously they have their gloves on and they're wearing masks, and then inside they're using water, but they also have I want to call it a disinfectant, but they're also using something on carts that we're using similar to the restaurant to make sure that everything is cleaned and sanitized correctly. So we're up to those standards where it's not your typical water and soap to make those returning correctly, but they're also wiping down, you know, sand bottles. They're taking out the scorecards. They're handing everybody new scorecards instead of giving people same scorecards that might not have been used. You should be getting a fresh pencil. So everything is getting cleaned in a much more, the right word, I guess, is it's almost as if it's coming off the production line much more fresh than it ever has been before, because we want to make sure there's safety, not just for the associate, but also for the golfers that are using those carts. So the turn of everything is much more sanitized than it's ever been, but we are using some products that are different than we have in the past.
All right, thank you so much. Our next question is from Ellen Harrison, lot 9126. Are there any plans for the Chimneys venue yet?
Well, because I'm still fairly new in the transition from Chimneys back to the community, the POA, the plans are, yes, is to take over and be able to run special events and plans and special events and banquets out of the Chimneys. I know that Mandy is right now actively selling weddings and banquets for that space. So I'll have to be here a little bit more to kind of put a better plan in front of you. I know I spoke a lot about plan prior to in my part of the presentation. So we are still in the planning process, but we are actively selling right now for 2021.
Thank you for your answer. Our next question, and we're getting these questions live on YouTube, so they're pouring in, we're keeping up. Bob Hornsby, lot 5128 asks, have we looked at selling the club to a firm like Club Corps? Club Corps has successfully purchased dozens of clubs over the years and turned them around. Okay, this is a kind of a broad question. So Bob, do you want to take a shot at this one?
Okay. Will you say selling the club? do you mean managing it as Bobby Jones Links, or selling it to me is, we have this huge advantage of owning our own amenities, of being self-governing. I don't see that on the horizon. Does anyone else see it? Regis, you were involved with the Troon, which was a little bit different view of this. Do you see anything other than that?
No, I agree with you, Bob. I think that, certainly Club Corp, as the property owner has suggested, has a very good reputation for purchasing golf clubs, both the courses and the food and beverage operations. They have done a very good job in turning some of those clubs around financially. I think at this point, as Bob suggested, there are a lot of advantages to owning our own amenities. One of the things I might want to say, and I don't know Club Core business intimately, but I think they do get good value on the dollar when they purchase those clubs. They're more or less the last ditch effort for a community to save the golf amenity, and they are, because of that, if they're a money losing operation, they will sell at basically fire sale prices, and we certainly don't want to do that. I think it was the decision of the board last year that we would give Bobby Jones, a professional management concern, the opportunity to see what they can do to turn the operation and financial performance of both the clubhouse and the golf course in a more positive direction. I think Gautam, in his presentation on the food and beverage, has certainly instilled in me a great deal of confidence that they will be able to do that. So I think this is moving to a professional management company like a Troon or a Bobby Jones is a good step, but it is well short of just selling the amenities outright to a company to a third party like Club Corp.
All right, thank you for those answers. Next question is from Martin Witt, lot 6073. Can you please provide insight for your projected impact on revenue and expenses due to COVID-19?
Yeah, I guess I can give a little bit of insight on where we're headed here. I don't have numbers in front of you, if that's what the question is to give you a pro forma. We really just started doing the revenue side. I will tell you this: Jane and her team are very helpful right now in keeping up with what the daily sales are through the curbside, because that is really the only option that we have. And I'm proud to announce that, when we first started, we did about 24 covers, and I don't have yesterday's numbers, but I do know on Thursday night they did 93 covers. So that number is rising. We are definitely watching our expenses when it comes to all of the operating costs. The only increase in operating costs that we have right now is really in the product that we are placing, or I should say the bags, the straws, the ramekins for ketchup and things like that we need to put into the bag to be able to do to go. We have lowered greatly our amount of on-hand inventory when it comes to food, when it comes to beverage. We have not made any purchases other than food to make sure that we can do to go, in a timely manner, that we have enough. But I will be able to put a projection better after we get through the first 2 weeks of this. And I plan on giving that to the board, kind of saying like, hey, look at the good news here. The other side that is not necessarily coming down is the operating expenses in the payroll, because we are still paying everybody to the 6-month average. So we are managing as best as we can the revenues and the operating costs, plus our cost of goods. The high side being the the payroll is still gonna remain where it is, just so we can take care of everybody, but that's why this is a 30-day plan versus an extension of when the virus goes away. So it's a short-term gain, but very positive. We are gaining great momentum on the curbside. I cannot be more happy of how that's going, and really more proud of I call them kids because they work in the restaurant, but I can't be more proud of how hard people are working up there. It's really been positive.
All right, and thank you for that answer. Our next question is from John Herzler, lot 3216. Is the continuing payroll for associates being paid by Big Canoe POA or Bobby Jones Links?
Payroll will always be covered by Big Canoe POA. Even when the management contract is finalized, it will always be paid through the Big Canoe POA.
All right, our next question. We are typing the next question. It's from Tom Halsey, lot 1077. And he has, surveyors have been marking Steve Tate all week on both sides from the main gate to Ace Hardware. Is something being planned that concerns Big Canoe? I'm not quite sure who we could get to answer that. Someone from operations, maybe. Bob, do you want to address that?
I think I can answer that, Mr. Crouch, I guess, is I can take the information down, Tim, and reach out to Jason Brownell and just ask him and respond directly to Mr. Halsey, or however we want to get the information disseminated. But I'm not aware of any, but we can find out for sure.
All right, we'll make sure that our Public Works Department gets a hold of that question. We do have another question here. Okay, from Jane Rambo, lot 3000. What is the status of the land purchase, specifically the High Gap plat that was briefly offered to a land conservatory? All right, I guess that would go to Bob as well to get it started. That's a big picture question.
Okay, back 10 and punt. In my 1 month experience on the board, we haven't addressed that one. Could somebody, either Jay or Wayne, talk about what's happened in the past 2 years?
Can you hear me?
All right, we can hear you.
As most everyone knows, it's been here a bit. We had an offer on Highgate, and after we went through a fairly lengthy discussion and really looked closely at it, we elected not to pursue it. We have had no more offers on it. We continue to understand the importance of trying to look for some opportunities. But beyond that, neither Highgate or the land down near the roundabout have received any further bids or discussions from our standpoint.
All right, thank you, Wayne. Do we have another question? All right, I think that's the end of our live questions. Thank you very much. We'll turn this back over to you, Bob.
Trying to get unmuted. There I am. Hey, Tim, Justin, thank you very much. This was untested, untried, brand new territory. You did a great job on that. We appreciate it. And Candy, for the other ones, the written ones, thank you very much. Thank you, Ron, Don, and David, and your whole committee for an excellent presentation and update. Go, Tom. I think a lot of people have a lot better feeling for food and beverage now than they did. So thanks to everybody and all the board members for their support, continuing effort. And I guess we're about ready to say no or goodbye until I think Regis has something, but
Yeah, Bob, I was under the assumption we'd have an opportunity to ask questions from the board. And I guess I would just like to, actually, it's more of a clarification if Don is still there.
I'm still here.
Okay, Don, you made the statement, and I'm not quoting you exactly, but something along the lines of Big Canoe made a choice, a good choice in going with utilities or in choosing Utilities Inc. As my understanding was, Utilities, Big Canoe Board of Directors or PO did not actually choose Utilities Inc. Utilities Inc. was involved with a purchase of the assets of what was Big Canoe Utilities. And the board got involved with that transaction between two private parties, as opposed to us choosing Utilities Inc. And then my other question was, a lot of the discussion about the rate increase revolves around this 12% after-tax return on invested capital. So if possibly yourself or David or somebody from Utilities Inc. could give us some insight as to where that 12% came from, I think that would help a lot of property owners understand a little bit better the you certainly did a good job in explaining how that rate increase is calculated, but the basis of that rate increase.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. The first answer, Big Canoe POA entered into an SLOA or operating agreement with Big Canoe Utilities, and that's how it came to pass. I grant you that UIG bought the water system from the private owners, but then they entered into an agreement with the POA as to how to operate it. I think that answers question one. If my semantics weren't proper, I apologize. The second answer, I'm going to give you a brief statement and then I'll let David or Ron take over from there. The answer on the 12% rate increase is it was incorporated into and was a part of the SLOA. It was part of the agreement and it was signed and agreed to by the parties. So it sets the rate of return for UIG. Beyond that, David, if you want to jump in at this point, feel free.
Sure, thank you. I think the discussion of the 12% is probably best described in terms of how Utilities Inc. evaluated the risk that they were taking on by moving into Big Canoe Utilities. The 12% on its is not an unreasonable return for a company that's coming in and taking over an old and worn out system. That's in my view. I think it's important to recognize, and I didn't mention this before, that the 12% goes both ways. If the income from the water system is not high enough to make the 12% and we have to have a rate increase to do that, that's one thing. But if the income of the community's water system exceeds the 12% calculation, then we're entitled to a reduction in rates. So it's a fixed rate that cannot get any higher as far as Utilities Inc. is concerned. But on balance, Regis, my view is that it was a reasonable negotiation based on the risk that was perceived by Utilities Inc. in coming in.
Thank you very much.
All right, Bob, and back to you.
There we go. Okay, I'm unmuted. Unleashed. Does any other board member have any other questions of any of the presenters before we sign off? If not, thanks. Go out, stay safe, stay socially distanced until we get undistanced. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.